The day Sarah Morgan's life changed forever began like any other Tuesday in Oak Ridge Estates. The autumn sun cast long shadows across her manicured lawn as she helped her 14-year-old daughter, Lily, into the family's minivan. Lily's titanium wheelchair, a custom purple model and had taken months to save for, gleamed in the morning light as Sarah carefully folded it and placed it in the trunk. "Mom, I'm going to ace this math test," Lily announced confidently, tucking a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. Despite being born with spinal muscular atrophy, Lily approached life with unwavering determination and a smile that could illuminate the darkest room. "I know you will, sweetheart." Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand before closing the passenger door. As they pulled out of the driveway, Sarah noticed Veronica Chambers, her next-door neighbor of 5 years, watching from behind her pristine white curtains. The woman's pinched expression had become a fixture in the neighborhood, her reputation as the self-appointed enforcer of the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association rules preceding her like a dark cloud. What Sarah didn't know then was that this seemingly ordinary Tuesday would culminate in an act of vengeance so shocking that it would make headlines across the county and forever alter the quiet suburban community they called home. 3 hours later, Sarah sat across from Principal Martinez discussing Lily's upcoming science fair project when her phone vibrated with an urgent text from their neighbor Marcus. "Asterisk emergency at your house. Fire dep here. Come home no asterisk." The drive home passed in a blur of panic and prayer. When Sarah turned onto Maple Lane, the flashing lights of fire trucks and police cars nearly blinded her. The acrid smell of melted plastic and burned metal hung in the air as she parked haphazardly and rushed toward the small crowd gathered on her front lawn. "What happened? Where's the fire?" Sarah demanded, scanning the exterior of her home for damage. Fire Captain Rodriguez approached her, clipboard in hand. "Ma'am, are you Sarah Morgan? The fire was contained to your garage. We managed to keep it from spreading to the main house, but I'm afraid there's significant damage to the contents." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "The garage? But that's where?" She couldn't finish the sentence as she pushed past the yellow caution tape and peered inside the charred space. There, in the center of the garage floor, lay the blackened, twisted frame of Lily's wheelchair. "This was no accident," Detective Wilson stated flatly as she joined Sarah. "The fire was deliberately set, focused specifically on the wheelchair. Security footage from your neighbor's camera caught someone entering your garage around 10:30 this morning." Sarah's knees nearly buckled. "Who would do something like this?" The detective hesitated before answering. "We've taken Mrs. Chambers in for questioning. Your other neighbor's security camera captured her entering your garage with what appears to be a container of lighter fluid." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Sarah processed this information. Veronica Chambers, the same woman who had filed 3 complaints about Sarah's garden gnomes, who had sent certified letters about the shade of blue Sarah had painted her mailbox, who had argued vehemently against the small wheelchair ramp Sarah had installed at their front entrance, had crossed an unimaginable line. "But why?" Sarah whispered, though in her heart she already knew. The HOA meeting last Thursday, the heated exchange. Sarah's public challenge to Veronica's authority when she'd suggested implementing more accessibility measures throughout the community. The venomous whisper as they left the community center. "You'll regret making an enemy of me." Sarah's shock crystallized into something harder, colder, and more resolute. As she watched the firefighters finish clearing her garage, he made a silent vow that would change everything. Veronica Chambers had no idea who she'd just declared war on. And the quiet, accommodating Sarah Morgan, who had tolerated years of HOA tyranny, was about to become extinct. The temporary wheelchair the hospital had loaned Lily squeaked with every push, a constant reminder of what they had lost. Sarah guided her daughter through their front door after a grueling day of police statements and insurance claims. Lily hadn't spoken much since learning what happened, her usual vivacity dimmed by the knowledge that someone had deliberately targeted her most prized possession, her independence. "We'll get you a new one, sweetie," Sarah promised, smoothing Lily's hair as she helped her onto the living room couch. "An even better one." Lily's eyes, so like her late father's, met Sarah's. "It's not about the chair, Mom. It's about knowing someone hates us that much." The words hung in the air, heavy with truth that Sarah couldn't dismiss. Her phone buzzed again, the 5th call from Marcus since they'd left the police station. This time she answered. "The whole neighborhood is talking," Marcus said without preamble. "Veronica's been released on bail. Her husband's telling everyone you're exaggerating, that it was just a misunderstanding about some storage items in your garage." Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. "A misunderstanding?" "She torched my daughter's wheelchair." I know," Marcus soothed. "Listen, there's an emergency HOA meeting tomorrow night. Veronica's husband called it. Technically, he's still the vice president. They're claiming it's about community safety concerns, but everyone knows it's damage control." After hanging up, Sarah sank onto the couch beside Lily, mind racing. For 5 years, she kept her head down in Oak Ridge Estates. As a single mother with a child who had special needs, she'd avoided conflict, tolerated Veronica's petty tyranny, and focused on giving Lily a stable home. The path of least resistance had seemed the wisest choice. That path had led them here, to ashes and violation. That night, after Lily had finally fallen asleep, Sarah's laptop glowed in the darkness as she combed through the HOA bylaws, county regulations, and state laws regarding homeowners associations. Dawn was breaking when she finally closed the computer, a plan taking shape in her mind. The community center buzzed with tension the following evening. Nearly every homeowner in Oak Ridge Estates had shown up, unprecedented for an HOA meeting, filling the room with whispers and sidelong glances. Sarah and Lily arrived 15 minutes early, positioning themselves in the front row directly across from the board table where Veronica's husband Gerald, along with the other board members, were arranging papers with forced casualness. Veronica herself was notably absent. "I call this emergency meeting to order," Gerald announced at precisely 7:00 p.m., his banker's voice carrying across the now silent room. "Before we address the agenda, I want to acknowledge the unfortunate incident that occurred yesterday and express the board's regret for any misunderstandings that may have." "Misunderstandings?" Sarah stood, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "My daughter's medical equipment was deliberately destroyed in an act of arson. The police have security footage. There's nothing to misunderstand about a hate crime." Gerald's face reddened. "Now see here, Mrs. Morgan, that's a serious accusation and not on tonight's agenda. If you'd like to submit a formal complaint through proper channels." "I already submitted it to the police," Sarah interrupted, extracting a folder from her tote bag, "along with these." She approached the board table and spread out 27 printed emails, text messages, and certified letters, all from Veronica, all containing increasingly hostile language about Sarah's violations and eyesores. "For the record," Sarah continued, her voice carrying through the hushed room, "I also filed complaints with the Department of Housing about multiple violations of the Fair Housing Act in this community. Denying reasonable accommodations for residents with disabilities is against federal law." The room erupted into murmurs as board member Nancy Chen leaned forward. "What violations are you referring to, Sarah?" "The ramp request that was denied 3 times, the accessible parking spot application that disappeared, the pool lift proposal that was voted down despite legal requirements." Sarah turned to face her neighbors. "And I suspect I'm not the only one who's been bullied into compliance with rules that go beyond HOA authority." Like a dam breaking, voices began to rise around the room. "They fined me $500 for having a basketball hoop. They threatened litigation when my mother visited in her RV for 2 days. I was written up for having garden tools visible from the street." Gerald banged his gavel ineffectually as the meeting spiraled beyond his control. "This is completely out of order. These complaints need to be submitted in writing and..." 3 weeks into Sarah's tenure as HOA president, Oak Ridge Estates was experiencing what longtime residents called a renaissance. The newly formed Accessibility Committee had already approved 5 previously denied accommodation requests. Community bulletin boards, once monopolized by violation notices, now featured neighborhood events and resource sharing. The atmosphere had shifted palpably, except at 42 Maple Lane, where Veronica Chambers' Tudor-style home stood like a fortress of resentment. Sarah hadn't seen Veronica since the night of the fire. The court had issued a temporary restraining order keeping her 500 feet from the Morgan household, and Veronica's attorney had advised her to maintain a low profile while awaiting trial. But Sarah knew better than to believe the quiet meant surrender. "You got another letter," Lily announced, wheeling herself into the kitchen where Sarah was reviewing architectural requests. The temporary wheelchair had been replaced with a loaner from the Spinal Muscular Atrophy Foundation. Not as perfectly fitted as Lily's custom chair had been, but a significant improvement. The insurance money was still tied up in red tape, with the company dragging its feet on the claim. Sarah took the envelope, recognizing the law firm's letterhead immediately. It was the 3rd cease and desist letter this week, each more threatening than the last. This one alleged Sarah was abusing her position to wage a personal vendetta and demanded she recuse herself from any decisions affecting the chamber's property. "Recycling bin?" Lily asked, eyeing the letter. Sarah smiled, folding it carefully instead. "Evidence file." Her lawyer is getting desperate. The doorbell rang and Sarah opened it to find Marcus holding a bakery box. "Peace offering from the Architectural Review Committee. We approved 17 fence variance requests today, a new record." Once inside, Marcus' expression turned serious. "Have you seen this?" He pulled up a Facebook post on his phone. It was a private group called Save Oak Ridge Estates, administered by Gerald Chambers. The latest post featured a spreadsheet detailing supposed property value decreases since Sarah had taken over. "They're claiming your radical agenda is tanking home values," Marcus explained. "Gerald's rallying people to demand a special election to reinstate the old board." Sarah studied the numbers, her former accounting career coming in handy. These figures are completely fabricated. The Hendersons sold their home last week for $15,000 over asking price. I know that, and you know that, Marcus said, but they're convincing some people. Gerald's been hosting meetings at their country club with the wealthier homeowners, playing on fears about neighborhood standards slipping. Sarah rubbed her temples. She'd expected resistance, but the coordinated campaign surprised her. How many supporters does he have? Maybe 20 households. Not enough for a recall vote yet, but they're persistent. After Marcus left, Sarah found Lily in the living room surrounded by poster board and markers. What's all this? Visual aids for tomorrow's community meeting, Lily explained, holding up a chart showing the neighborhood's history of accommodation requests and denials. I've been going through the old meeting minutes you brought home. Did you know Veronica rejected Mrs. Patel's request for a small religious shrine in her backyard garden 3 times? It wasn't even visible from the street. Sarah marveled at her daughter's thoroughness. At 14, Lily was proving to be her most valuable ally, channeling her frustration into action rather than despair. They worked side by side into the evening, preparing for the next day's community meeting, the first to be held on a Saturday afternoon so working parents could attend. The community center was buzzing when they arrived. Sarah had expected perhaps 30 attendees. Instead, nearly 100 neighbors filled the seats. She recognized many faces who had never participated in HOA matters before. What she hadn't expected was to see Veronica and Gerald Chambers seated in the back row, surrounded by their closest allies. They can't be here, Sarah whispered to Marcus, who was helping set up the projector. But restraining order... Technically, the order prevents her from coming within 500 feet of your home, not from attending public meetings, he replied grimly. Their lawyer probably advised them on the loophole. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she arranged her notes at the podium, but she refused to show weakness. The meeting began with committee reports, all positive, all reflecting the community's renewed engagement. When it was time for open forum, Gerald Chambers was the first to his feet. The morning of Veronica's court hearing dawned with an unexpected development. Sarah opened her front door to retrieve the newspaper and found an envelope taped to her mailbox. Inside was a check for $32,450, the exact cost of Lily's destroyed wheelchair, along with a typed note. Asterisk for the replacement of your daughter's medical equipment. This is not an admission of guilt, but a humanitarian gesture. In return, we request your support in dropping the criminal charges, which would only further divide our community, and your resignation from the HOA board, effective immediately asterisk. It was signed by Gerald Chambers. Sarah's hands shook as she read it twice more. The insurance company had finally denied their claim last week, citing a technicality about garage storage. With Lily's health insurance only covering a basic model, they were facing a significant financial gap for a replacement custom chair. This check would solve that problem instantly. What's that? Lily asked, wheeling into the kitchen where Sarah stood staring at the check. Sarah hesitated, then handed it over. A bribe. Lily studied the check, then the note, her expression hardening. They think we could be bought off. It's a lot of money, Lily, Sarah said quietly. Money we need. So was setting fire to my wheelchair a humanitarian gesture too? Lily handed the papers back. What are you going to do? Before Sarah could answer, her phone rang. It was Detective Wilson. Mrs. Morgan, I'm calling to inform you that Mrs. Chambers has agreed to a plea deal. She's pleading guilty to criminal mischief rather than arson, with a sentence of community service and restitution. The DA accepted because it guarantees a conviction without the uncertainty of trial. They knew, Sarah whispered after hanging up. They knew about the plea deal before we did. Marcus and Thomas were equally outraged when Sarah called an emergency meeting at her kitchen table that afternoon. It's textbook rich people justice, Thomas fumed. Plead to a lesser charge, throw money at the problem, and expect it all to go away. The timing is deliberate, Marcus added. The formal HOA election is next week. They're trying to neutralize you before the vote. Sarah paced the kitchen, the check still on the counter like a ticking bomb. I could use that money to get Lily exactly what she needs. No more compromises, no more waiting. But at what cost? Thomas asked gently. We could refuse their terms but still cash the check, Marcus suggested. It's not like they can take it back once it clears. Sarah shook her head. That's not who I want to be. That's not what I want to teach Lily. By evening, Sarah had made her decision. She returned the check to the Chamber's mailbox with a note of her own. Asterisk justice isn't negotiable asterisk. What she couldn't have anticipated was Veronica's response. The following morning, Sarah arrived at her office. She had recently returned to part-time accounting work to find her boss waiting with an uncomfortable expression. There's no easy way to say this, Sarah, he began. We've received a letter from an attorney representing a major client threatening to pull their business if we continue employing you. Something about a conflict of interest with their board member Gerald Chambers. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Gerald sat on the board of Westlake Financial Group, her firm's biggest client. They're claiming your involvement in a vindictive campaign against Mr. Chambers creates untenable professional concerns. Her boss looked miserable. I fought for you, Sarah, but the partners voted. They're offering a generous severance package. By noon, Sarah had cleared out her desk. By 3 o'clock, the story had somehow leaked to the neighborhood gossip network. By dinner time, her phone was flooded with messages from concerned neighbors. This is crossing a line, Marcus declared when he stopped by that evening. Going after your livelihood. That's beyond HOA politics. Election day arrived with unexpected tension. Sarah had anticipated a straightforward voting process. Residents filing into the community center, casting ballots, awaiting results. What she hadn't expected was the crowd gathered outside the building 2 hours before polls opened or the local news van parked near the entrance. What's happening? Sarah asked Marcus as they approached. Gerald leaked something to the press, he replied grimly. They're calling it HOA Gate, claiming financial mismanagement and corruption. Sarah's stomach dropped. Based on what evidence? Some emails from your HOA account, apparently. They're saying you fast-tracked approvals for friends while delaying projects for Chambers supporters. As they neared the community center, Sarah spotted Veronica and Gerald holding court with a reporter, Veronica's perfectly highlighted hair catching the morning sunlight. Even from a distance, Sarah could see the victorious gleam in her eyes. Mom, Lily whispered, her hands gripping her wheelchair armrests tightly. Everyone staring. Sarah straightened her shoulders. Let them. We have nothing to hide. Inside, the community center had been transformed. Election volunteers worked at check-in tables while residents clustered in tense groups, conversations halting as Sarah entered. Thomas River hurried toward them, his expression grave. They're distributing copies of your emails, he said without preamble, heavily edited to make standard approvals look suspicious. How did they get my emails? Sarah demanded. Gerald's still an administrator on the HOA server. He had legal access, technically. A young woman approached, microphone in hand, cameraman trailing behind. Mrs. Morgan? Alicia Chen from Channel 8 News. Care to comment on allegations that you use your position to benefit political allies while targeting opponents? Sarah took a deep breath. I'd be happy to address that after reviewing exactly what's being alleged. In the meantime, all HOA decisions, including the emails in question, are part of public record and available for transparent review. The reporter looked disappointed at the measured response, and your reaction to Mrs. Chambers' statement that you've divided the community as revenge for a personal dispute. Before Sarah could respond, Lily wheeled forward. Excuse me, but how exactly does burning someone's wheelchair count as a personal dispute? The reporter blinked, clearly caught off guard. I'm sorry, you are. Lily Morgan, the owner of the wheelchair that Mrs. Chambers set on fire, which she pled guilty to in court. That was the personal dispute. The camera swung toward Lily as the reporter's professional mask slipped momentarily. Mrs. Chambers described it as an unfortunate misunderstanding involving stored items. It was my mobility device, Lily said firmly, and there was nothing misunderstood about it. Could we get a shot of you two together? The cameraman asked, moving closer. Sarah put a protective hand on Lily's shoulder. My daughter is a minor and not available for interviews. If you'll excuse us, we need to check in for the election. As they moved away, Sarah whispered, that was brave, but we need to be careful. They'll twist anything we say. Like they twisted your emails? Lily asked. Mom, running away makes us look guilty. Before Sarah could respond, Gerald Chambers approached, hand extended as if they were old friends, clearly aware of the camera still filming from a distance. Sarah, so glad you could make it. I was hoping we could address the community together before voting begins, show there's no ill will despite our differences. The calculated move was obvious. Positioned himself as reasonable while putting Sarah on the defensive. If she refused, she'd appear petty. If she agreed, she'd look like she endorsed his version of events. Certainly, Gerald, Sarah replied, matching his false cordiality. In fact, let's invite the election committee to join us. They can explain the voting process and address any concerns about accuracy and fairness. Gerald's smile faltered slightly. I was thinking something more informal. Transparency is important, don't you think? Especially today. 15 minutes later, the community center was packed as the election committee chairperson, Ms. Capper, called for attention. Before voting begins, both candidates have requested time to address concerns that have arisen. Each will have 5 minutes, followed by questions. Mrs. Chambers' husband will speak first on her behalf, followed by Mrs. Morgan. Gerald stepped forward confidently, adjusting his tie. Friends and neighbors, this election isn't about personalities but principles. Do we want Oak Ridge estates to maintain the standards that have made it desirable or sacrifice them for a misguided social agenda?